everyone, and welcome back. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz. I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. I help answer parents' questions about autism, IEP, school, remote learning, anything you need to know to make sure your child has the best possible experience at home and at school. So today, I'm actually partnering with someone. He's a friend. His name is Aidan Allan Cooper. He is an autistic self-advocate and an advocate for your child. He's an education advocate, and he's going to answer this question a parent sent in, which is, does a private school have to honor an IEP that's set forth by the school district? So Aidan, yes or no, is a private school required to honor an IEP?
Yes, yes, and yes. There are some private schools that seem to think that because they're a private school, they don't have to honor an IEP. Your private school absolutely has to honor an IEP. It doesn't matter what private school you go to. It doesn't matter if it's in Hogwarts, wherever you go to, the private school has to honor the IEP, and here's why. If your child has a specific disability, and that's what means when they have an IEP, they have a particular disability. If they were to, let's say, go to a therapeutic private school, a specific learning disabled school, if it's for developmental, it doesn't matter what private school that you go to. The fact that you either went to public school, the child went to public school, they're now at a private school, or they just went straight to a private school. The private school does still have the responsibility to ensure that the child is receiving and maintaining an appropriate educational environment. And so it's really one of those things where no matter where you go to, and this is one of the great things within education, with private schools, they still have the responsibility to ensure that a child really has a full, meaningful education.
Yeah, that's awesome advice, Aidan. And that's something I think parents need to know. Now, I have two follow-up questions on that. So who is required to pay for provisions of the IEP? So let's say, for example, a child is in a school setting and he has an aide, a one-on-one aide, and the school district is paying for that. If the parent pulls the child out of that school and elects to put him in a private school, does that school required to give them an aid? Is it the school district's responsibility to pay for that? Who would pay for it in that situation?
So if, in your example, if the parent were to say, you know what, I want to go to a private school for my child, and the school isn't involved in that whatsoever, there were no negotiations, there was no dispute resolution. If it was just a parent that unilaterally said that, the school has no obligation whatsoever to pay for the aid. In fact, if the child, let's say, was to be removed and go to a private school, it's possible they may have an aid, or it's possible they might not have an aid at all. But ultimately, it's the parent's prerogative to do that, and that's why if you are searching for a private school out there, ensuring, okay, if my child has an aid at the public school, will my child, do we think that my child may need an aid at the private school? Do they have that accessibility? If they don't have aids, will my child still get their needs met with or without an aid? So you really have to do your due diligence. And that's why having somebody that knows the private schools and somebody that knows the public schools and all the services that they offer, like me and other advocates, consultants, it's helpful to kind of really reach out to them so that you can walk through this journey not alone, and you have someone that really knows kind of the deal with what's going on within a school.
That's awesome. Thanks, Aidan. Yeah, and that's really, really good advice. And I think there is a difference between a parent and when a school is meeting a child's needs and there is no burden of proof. So for example, let's say a parent is just electing to go to a parochial school because of their religious background, maybe a school would not be required to pay for something in that setting. Would that be correct?
100%. And honestly, there's some theories out there, and this is a totally different topic for another day, but there's an idea where if a public school isn't working for a particular child or whatever, going to a religious school or going to some type of school may help. That's not always the case, so really ensuring that your child is receiving special education. If your child is receiving special education services at a public school and they need it, you're probably really going to want to ensure that they have special education services at the private school that can help your child as well. Because from going to a public school into a private school with no services, that can be very hard for a lot of children.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my final follow-up question for this parent is, can a private school, such as a religious school, deny a child with a disability the right to go to that school, saying that the school feels like they cannot accommodate a child's needs? So let's say a child had a lot of behavioral issues. Let's say they're nonverbal, they're autistic, they have behavioral issues, because a lot of the parents who are watching this channel, their kids may be in that situation. The school that's maybe associated with their church says, listen, we would love to help you, but we really truly can't. We don't have the staff for it, we don't have the resources for it, and we're not equipped to handle these behaviors. Is that legal for that school to say, we can't serve your child here?
Yeah, it is, and there are some good things about it, and then there are some things that are really upsetting. But the short answer is really yes. And when you have a private school can either have really everyone, where it doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. It could be a private school where it's fully catered to disabilities, or it could be, let's say, a religious-based school. And really, if they feel as though, if it's, let's say, a particular school that is pretty generalized, in other words, they have just parents, they say, you know what, I want my child to receive a private education, and they're, let's say, neurotypical, and then there's a few children that are a bit disabled. If they don't have the resources, or if they find your child to be too significant, or in other words, has too many needs that the school could meet, a lot of schools will say, unfortunately, we feel as though we wouldn't be best equipped to help you. However, here's another school. Or you can ask them, okay, if this school won't work, what could be another school? Another thing is that if your child, let's say, is disabled and goes to a school where it's just purely based on disabilities, and they say, unfortunately, we aren't able to help you, that's not necessarily discriminatory. That's saying, you know what, we think that your child may be best suited for somewhere that is a bit more intensive with their sources. So there's some good things about it. There's some not so great things about it. It depends on your situation, but most of the time, 90% of the time, or even higher, they do have the right to say, you know what, we really can't accept this placement.
Yeah, and I want to have you keep in mind as a parent, and no one wants to hear we can't help your child, or we think that your child is not fit for the school. No parent wants to hear that. The reality of it is that the goal is to give your child the best quality education possible. And if the school doesn't feel like they can do that, it's probably better to not pursue that route. So Aidan, thank you so much for answering those questions. We really appreciate you. Aidan and I actually co-authored a book called This is Autism. It's an anthology. We collaborated on it together. It has 12 stories of autistic adults who share their stories of what it's like to go through school, to be autistic. They have some of the kids in the book there, they talk about when they were kids and what their experiences were in school. Some of the adults had really positive experiences and some not so great experiences. So, and if you're wondering what made an experience really good for someone or not so good for someone, then check this book out. It may actually help you get your questions answered. So it's available on Amazon. This is Autism. If you have a question, send it in to me. I would love to address it. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz. I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. You can reach me via my website, hopeeducationservices.com. I look forward to connecting with you there.